Uh, I'm Erez. I'm from DcentraLab. It's an Israeli company. We started 5 years ago as a project named Tuki, and we became a hub building many projects. In this short presentation, we're going to talk about one of the hottest topics in DeFi space in crypto in the last 2 years, which is bridges and interoperability.
Hey guys, my name is Eitan. I'm one of the project leads at Chainport, which is a bridge project built by DcentraLab. And so right now I'm going to give like a brief history of blockchains. So in 2008, after one of the biggest crashes in modern financial history, Bitcoin comes out. And in 2014, we see the rise of Ethereum, and in 2015, we see smart contracts. And around 2018 and 2019, projects like Cosmos and Polkadot make it really easy for developers like myself to build their own blockchains. And then around that same time, we see an explosion of other EVM chains like BSC and layer 2 solutions like Polygon. And then we also start seeing non-EVM chains rise like Solana and Cardano. And what we've really seen over the last 10 or so years is like this organic explosion of different blockchains. Some of them provide different use cases. And we went from like Bitcoin, which is just like digital gold, to a whole computational layer on the blockchain. So it's really exciting times. But what does that really mean for us now? We see like this lack of connectivity between all these different blockchains. So we have all these L1s and L2s and non-EVMs and EVMs, but they can't really talk to each other, right? So like, for example, the Ethereum blockchain, everything that it does is within its own ecosystem. It doesn't know what's happening on BSC. It doesn't know what's happening on Polygon. So there's a lack of interoperability. And so for certain users, when they're transacting on Ethereum, the high gas costs are like super prohibitively expensive. So a user that just wants to trade $100 on Uniswap, well, they're going to pay like $20 in gas. That's no fun. And then also for blockchains like Bitcoin, transactions can take up to 15 minutes. The UTXO model that Bitcoin uses might be confusing to certain users. So there's like this difficult user experience on certain blockchains. And so that's kind of where bridges come into play.
What we are seeing in the last year is a boom of chains evolving into the space. It could be EVMs or non-EVMs. And those chains, they are giving incentive to projects to move to them. Some chains are faster, cheaper. And there is become a huge need for projects to move between those chains. What we saw in the last, think about it like this. So 2019 to 2014, only Bitcoin, 100% market share from all crypto space. 2014, Ethereum was introduced. This is a slide I took from CoinGecko from the last report. In the last year or 2 years, what we're seeing is other chains taking parts from Ethereum. Ethereum actually dropped to 54% from all the blockchains, excluding Bitcoin, in the last quarter. So maybe there's a small mistake here, which is 10%, which dropped down to zero in the last 2 weeks. But still, the trend is very clear. If this is BNB chain or Avalanche, all those chains are taking part from Ethereum, which became too expensive to use and sometimes too slow. And there were bridges came into space. So bridges take a bigger portion of this cake. There are a couple of bridges in the space. We have one of them. Bridges for different chains, for the biggest chains in the world, like Polygon and Avalanche. And there are agnostic bridges we are going to show you in a second. So what type of bridges can we find in crypto space? There are 3 types of bridges. The first type of bridge is a bridge per token. WBTC and REN, for example, these are the biggest one of its kind. They're just taking one token to one chain. In this case, Bitcoin to Ethereum. The second type of bridges is bridge per chain. All the biggest chains, they are building their own bridges usually in order to take some part from Ethereum and other chains. So we will have a BNB chain, Polygon, BNB bridge, Polygon bridge, etc. And the last part is generalized bridges, like Chainport, like AnySwap, like Wormhole. These are bridges that they support multiple chains and multiple tokens.
So yeah, now we come to this idea of the multi-chain thesis. So like 3 or 4 years ago, everyone was either like a Bitcoin maxi or an ETH maxi. But I think today, everyone's kind of on board with this idea of the multi-chain future. And it all comes down to this word called interoperability. So what is interoperability? Let's define it real quick. It's the ability for different blockchains to exchange and leverage data between one another. So as we said earlier, we have all these L1s and L2s, and we want them to be able to exchange data or digital assets or whatever that may be. All these different blockchains might offer something that the other doesn't. So whether it's faster, cheaper, bigger user base, more liquidity, or maybe it's like app specific. Maybe it's a great NFT marketplace. Maybe it's great for Web3 gaming. Or maybe there's just money being funneled into these blockchains and projects are being incentivized to build on them. Whatever that reason may be, we see that users want the flexibility to move in between different blockchains, and we really think that the future is multi-chain. So, as I said earlier, transferring digital assets between chain to chain is one part of this, but the other part is like this idea of like generalized cross-chain messaging. So being able to send messages from a smart contract on Ethereum to a smart contract on BSC in like this generalized manner. Also this idea of like cross-chain dApps, so decentralized applications that can operate on multiple chains at the same time. Things like cross-chain flash loans, cross-chain atomic transactions, all these cool stuff that we're just starting to build today. And so why is interoperability important? As we said earlier, a bunch of L1s and L2s, and the communication layer between these blockchains is still really a work in progress. Most bridges today, they can transfer digital assets between one another pretty well. They can transfer maybe NFTs or ERC20s, but this idea of like cross-chain messaging or cross-chain dApps is still really in its infancy. And then another reason why interoperability is important is we see like fractionalized liquidity between all these different blockchains. So on Ethereum, for example, there might be deep liquidity for a certain token, but on Polygon it might be a lot less. And so that's kind of bad for users, that's bad for DeFi, and we really think interoperability can help solve that. So how do bridges work? So most bridges today, when they're transferring digital assets, it's actually pretty simple. You have your source chain, so let's say Ethereum, for example. A user will come and deposit their tokens on the source chain, and they'll select their target chain, let's say it's BSC, and then so the token will be deposited on Ethereum, and then on the target chain on BSC, the token will be minted. A new wrapped version of the token will be minted. And that's how most bridges work today. If users want to go back the other way, they burn that wrapped asset on BSC and then withdraw their asset on Ethereum. So it's very simple actually. But that's just the first layer of interoperability. As I mentioned earlier, there's this idea of cross-chain messaging and cross-chain dApps, and we're really just scratching the surface right now.
Now the biggest problem with this technology is, of course, it's just too early, too mature. And what we saw in the last couple of months is many hacks. Almost all the bridges in the space got hacked. The biggest DeFi hack was for a bridge, Poly Network, more than $600 million. Wormhole, $300 million just a couple of months ago. The need for bridges is clear, but how do you solve the security issues? That's a big thing. How we see the future? We see it as chain wars. We think that in the future, there's going to be a constant war between all the different blockchains. They will incentivize different projects and tokens to move between those chains. And also the users will sometimes won't even ask the project owners, the minter, if to move. They will just move their tokens by themselves between different chains for their own needs. Sometimes we also believe that the chains themselves will move the tokens between different ones. So we would say that the future is multi-chain for sure. This is, as you see, partial list from the biggest bridges in space. We took it from DeFi Llama. WBTC, of course, is the biggest one. Multichain, which is a generalized bridge, is the second biggest. And some Israeli pride, number 9 is Chainport. This is our project. We are also a generalized bridge. We are now supporting seven chains, EVMs. We support now Ethereum, Polygon, BNB chain, Moonbeam, Fuse, and Avalanche. We are going to support many more EVMs in the next couple of months, and also non-EVMs. Cardano is going to be the first one. What makes us different from other bridges is 2 very unique features. First of all, we are the only custodian bridge in the space. The way we operate, we are keeping the tokens, the layer 1 tokens, on Fireblocks or Gnosis safe multi-sig vaults, called vaults. which makes the bridge much safer. So any given moment, we are keeping up to 5% of the tokens on the contracts. And beside that, we are the only bridge that provides full interoperability. You can take your token from Ethereum, for example, and then go to Avalanche, and then Polygon, and then to BNB, and then back to Ethereum. You don't have to go back to the native chain after every porting, which is very unique in the space. Right now, we have almost $200 million in TVL. At the peak of the market a few months ago, it reached almost 500 million, and more than 100 tokens supported so far. We are working very closely with projects that want to migrate their tokens between the different chains. Sometimes they come to us because they just want to move away from Ethereum, which is too expensive. And sometimes they just get grants or something from another blockchain. Sometimes it's a demand from the community. We also start supporting now native chains from other blockchains. So right now we support, for example, BNB native chain tokens and Polygon native tokens, and very soon other native tokens. So we have many open positions. If you're looking to join the space, you're welcome to check our website. Thank you very much for having us, and have a great event. It's good to be here after almost 3 years to have a good event in Israel.
Thanks, guys.